Hello and welcome to the CNBC Africa special. We're sitting down with the CEO of Johannesburg Incorporated. That's the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, His Worship the Mayor Park Stow. Thank you so much for making the time to sit down with us once again. Your term is coming to an end in less than 2 years. And I'm quite certain that as you gave your State of the City address, you were touching on some of your notable achievements in your term thus far. In a quick summation, what do you think you've achieved for the city?
Thank you very much and good day. I think in fact today what we're reporting to the residents and people of Johannesburg was progress with regards to, in the first instance, the implementation of our growth and development strategy. You would recall that as the City of Johannesburg, one of the first things we did immediately after the elections was to consult the residents and stakeholders of Johannesburg on the challenges and opportunities in the City of Johannesburg and a draft strategy. On the basis of the submissions we received, we developed a comprehensive long-term strategy for the City of Johannesburg, Joburg 2040. Out of the Joburg 2040 strategy, there were a number of elements that were identified. No doubt one of the key priorities was about generating the necessary resources in the City of Johannesburg to take forward the work that needs to be done. So we use today to give feedback on where we've arrived in relation to the financial situation of Johannesburg.
And do you have a good story to tell as well?
Certainly a very good story to tell. Look at it this way. When we started the term of office in 2011, this was immediately after the World Cup. The city had just spent a lot of money on the World Cup. And we were in a situation of an organization that had a surplus of 390 million rands, and we were running a capital budget of 3.9 billion rands. That situation has turned around. We can say to the people of Johannesburg that we've increased our capital expenditure in infrastructure in the City of Johannesburg from 3.9 billion rands then to 7.6 billion rands in the current financial year. We're actually consulting on a capital budget for the next financial year of 10.9 billion rands. No doubt that is a significant improvement in our ability to spend on infrastructure to improve the quality of services to the residents and business in Johannesburg. We can also say that our cash position has improved, that in fact our cash surplus at the end of, and cash and cash equivalents at the end of the last financial year was standing at 5.4 billion rand. So from that point of view, a liquidity point of view, if you look at our balance sheet, you look at our income statement, the City of Johannesburg is in a good position.
Let's go back to that issue of liquidity. We've seen some of these international rating agencies, which I no doubt are also paying attention to this particular address that you gave today. And they've highlighted liquidity as a key concern when we look at the financial health of the city. Is this a real concern for you? And if it is, how have you managed to turn that situation around, and how are you going to sustain that position?
We officially have two ratings agencies that rate the City of Johannesburg. That's Fitch and Moody's. And they've both given us a AA- investment grade rating. That's a very good rating for an organization the nature of Johannesburg. They've also indicated that the outlook is stable to the extent that there are challenges on the sovereign rating. The outlook is stable, but when they look at the City of Johannesburg, they're quite happy about the liquidity and cash position of the City of Johannesburg. And how have we achieved that? We've looked at improving the quality and management of our billing and revenue environment. We've looked at efficiency gains in the City of Johannesburg. You would recall a few months ago when we had workers at City Power protesting because we've changed shift systems so that we're able to gain efficiencies in the organization. That's just one of the areas where we've identified inefficiencies in the way in which shifts are managed, not just in Pick It Up and City Power, but throughout the organization. We've introduced measures that ensure that we can gain efficiencies through the way in which we manage our staff.
Let's go back to billing. I mean, when we look at your speech that you gave last year, you highlighted that the revenue that you were able to get, the efficiency of your revenue or billing system was sitting at 92%. For the ordinary person, perhaps they don't have that many positives to say about the billing system of the City of Johannesburg. Let's first talk about how have you improved from that 92% that you spoke about last year, and how have you improved this for the experience of the residents of Johannesburg who continuously talk about an irregular billing system that is inaccurate and doesn't always reflect the figures of what they think they've consumed?
The numbers speak for themselves. I mean, one of the reasons we're able to generate the resources that we're able to generate is because of improved billing and an environment in which people are comfortable to pay for their bills. Because one of the problems we experienced when we had major billing problems in the city was people were uncomfortable to pay because they were not sure about the actual bills that they're receiving. More and more people are giving us feedback that in fact they've seen a significant improvement in that. There are still areas where there are gaps. But
how did you build that credibility back?
It's about dedication, it's about hard work, and it's about deploying the appropriate resources. I mean, you would know that immediately after the elections, one of the things we did was to recruit one of the top civil servants in the country, the former COO in the presidency during the era of our former president, Thabo Mbeki, to be the city manager of Johannesburg. We've recruited high-level expertise into the organization. Some of them we've not been able to appoint full-time, therefore we've brought in consultants with specialized expertise to help us build an organization that can deliver services. So we brought in capacity to deal with the billing environment. We've brought in capacity, for example, to deal with the engineering environment, because cities are about engineering services. We provide roads, water services, sanitation services, electricity. We've set up a center of engineering excellence. We've brought in capacity from a capital and investment management capacity on the engineering side of the organization, so that in fact, even as we deploy our resources, we're able to extract value for money.
Before we move on from the financial aspects of the report back that you gave to the residents of the city today, let's talk about some of the municipal and the green bonds that you've mentioned in your speech. How are you deploying these instruments?
The City of Johannesburg, of course, pioneered the first municipal bonds in the country. We are now actually in the next few weeks issuing the first green bond in the City of Johannesburg, and we would be deploying it in areas where we're able to achieve sustainable development and climate change mitigation measures. We are excited about some of the projects. So if you look at alternative energy sources for our metro bus system, we've procured 150 buses currently being adjudicated, and the adjudication is being finalized. That would be propelled through a dual fuel system, a hybrid system between compressed natural gas and diesel. We're able to reduce carbon emissions on the basis of the pilot that we ran since February of 2 buses that are currently part of the Metro Bus fleet, of 90% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And that's the sort of projects that we're investing the money in, so that we can be able to do that. If you look at our sewer treatment plants at the Northern Works, we launched a project in November last year, where part of the energy that's generated at the Northern Works is generated through the treatment of the sludge, and therefore turning the sludge into gas and gas into electricity. Therefore, the electricity is actually self-generated.
Right. Mr. I interjected while you were talking about infrastructure, and I want us to go back there because looking from your speech, I'm sure that transport infrastructure is a big component of the spend that we're seeing in the city. Let's talk about Rea Vaya and some of the progress that you've made in that particular project.
We, in December last year, launched Rea Vaya Phase 1B that now links Empire Perth into Soweto. That would go past the Wits University, UJ, past Westbury into North Gesag and into Orlando East. We've also started construction on what is called the Louis Porter Corridor, which is really along the Louis Porter route in the City of Johannesburg. And part of what that does is it enables us to improve mobility between the inner city, Sandton and Alexandra. We will be building, as part of this project, a bridge that links directly Sandton and Alexandra. There would be a dedicated bus lane that goes over the M1 highway linking Sandton and Alexandra. We would be having improved public transportation and mobility inside Sandton, because one of the challenges that we face as a city is actually increased congestion in Sandton, and we're having to find solutions for mobility inside Sandton. So it's not just about mobility from one spot to the next. It's also about mobility in areas where there are strategic economic nodes in the city that requires that will reduce the pressure on those areas, improve the efficiency of movement, and therefore improve the way in which the economy functions.
It sounds as if the rear via system is quite integral to your vision of integrating the city. Let's go back to some of the news headlines that we saw on the 31st of March in particular, with workers or bus drivers in particular saying that they're actually not going to drive buses on that day. What gave rise to that situation?
Let me start by saying that the City of Johannesburg, like all of South Africa, believes in a labour dispensation that recognizes the right of workers to engage in industrial action, and of course recognizes the rights of employers to seek recourse. So when that took place, we understood it to be in the context of workers engaging in their rights. They were raising concerns about the ability of employees that have been in the system earlier to be able to select their own shifts. And our argument, in fact, was to Payasyougo, which is the management company of Revi, but this system has only been in place 4 years. How do you already have seniority to the extent that people now argue shifts? But that's neither here nor there. We think that it's a situation that has ultimately been resolved between Labour and Payasyougo and ultimately the City of Johannesburg.
With this particular situation having flared up once, do you at any point feel that this could threaten this particular vision that you have for integrating the city, that the relationship between the workers, yourselves, and maybe some union factors might be a factor of instability in bringing this vision to reality?
I think that we should be cautious about a situation where whenever there is a strike, we start blaming unions and workers for being irresponsible. I think we should accept that in a democratic environment, workers would engage in industrial activity and that employers would have recourse. We do not always agree with the reasons, like we didn't agree with the Revi strike because we don't think that the reasons were adequate. But I don't think that we should ultimately reach a situation where for every strike we reach a panic. So as the City of Johannesburg, we're not really panicking. We think that workers engaged in what they consider legitimate industrial action. We sought recourse through the courts of law. The courts made a particular ruling. But ultimately, even before then, there was an agreement reached between Labour and employer to say this is the route that we should take. So from that point of view, I think that we've established a fairly solid labour relations environment, and we should continue encouraging dialogue between employee and employer so that, in fact, the labour relations environment functions properly. This should not just be applicable in the Revi system, it should be applicable in all other areas and facets of the City of Johannesburg, whether this is in the bus system, whether it's in Pick It Up or in City Power. Let us try and resolve the matters through negotiation. But we should also accept that the responsibility of the employer and the City of Johannesburg is to ensure that we manage the resources at our disposal. These are public resources. We manage them prudently and as efficiently as we can, and in the interest of the people of Johannesburg.
Your Worship, let's take a 2-minute break. We're going to take a break now, but when we return, we pick up the conversation looking in particular at road infrastructure and some of the headaches that Johannesburg residents would want to pose to the Mayor, Mr. Parkstyle. Don't go away. Welcome back to the CNBC Africa special. We're still sitting down with the CEO of Johannesburg Incorporated. That's the Mayor of the City of Johannesburg, His Worship Parkstyle. Welcome back. Thanks again for being here. How would you describe the state of the roads in Johannesburg right now?
Well, the roads in Johannesburg require a lot of investment. We've increased the capital budget of the JRA from what was standing at about 300 million rands to 1.5 billion rands projected in the next financial year. That means that we're able to change the way in which we've been investing. We're able to change from a situation in which we've had to patch potholes to a situation where we can recapitalize the roads, because the infrastructure, like with all other infrastructure, is aging and is beginning to face significant challenges. So let us recapitalize. We are comfortable that the program of recapitalization has started in the current financial year. We've seen areas where through resurfacing, we're seeing less and less problems. And it's not just the roads. The mandate of the roads agency relates to stormwater management, to bridge management, but also to traffic light management. So this capital budget enables the Joburg Roads Agency to invest in these areas that are key pressure points. What we've said to the Roads Agency, though, is that we appreciate the fact that we need to spread our resources to the entire city of Johannesburg. But let us refocus our energies over the next 2 years in the key economic nodes of the city so that we make those function better. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, in addition to capital, when it comes to the maintenance of the roads, of course, you've also highlighted a labor-intensive approach. Why have you chosen a labor-intensive approach over a technology-effective approach? Because it seems as if the way the roads are currently being maintained, it's just not working.
In almost everything that we do in the city of Johannesburg, we try and maximize opportunities to deal with poverty, unemployment, and inequality. We understand the pressures that the people of this city face with regards to poverty. We attract an estimated 10,000 people into Johannesburg every month. Those people come here in search of opportunity for employment, in search of opportunities for skills, and the opportunities that an urban system provides. So,
have you then overlooked some of the more technology-efficient methods to maintaining the roads over an approach that emphasizes the need to give people jobs?
No, it's not at the expense of efficiency. We're not maintaining at the expense of efficiency. We're saying, let us maximize employment creation opportunities. So we look at labor-intensive methods, not methods that reduce standards, but methods that improve the opportunities to create jobs. So it's not necessarily a contradiction to say that through labor intensity you reduce quality. It's not necessarily
You've
true.
spoken about developmental contracting, and in particular you said you've raised the percentile of how much of the budget is going to go to developmental contracting. First, let's take a step back. What do you mean by developmental contracting?
What we mean is what we call a community co-production model. We've titled it Jozi at Work. Jozi at Work is about a program where we say we can contract with the local organizations, local enterprises to do maintenance. So, for example, pipe replacement and maintenance. We've piloted in Alexandra, where the maintenance of the network for Joburg water is done through local contractors. We can do the same for the maintenance of part of our road network. We can do part of that through the painting of our road network for signage. We can do part of that for other services that we provide that do not require high intensity and high skill levels to be able to do.
What informs the 10%?
10% is about a starting point. We're actually targeting to grow that to 30%. And the idea is that every single economy that creates jobs is built at the back of small and medium and micro enterprises. And our level of SMME development in this country is too low for us to be able to deal with our socioeconomic challenges. We need to use government procurement to incubate small enterprises so that we have more and more people creating jobs, and we reduce the extent of vertical integration of our economy and create, therefore, the opportunities for many people to participate. I can say that we've engaged 600 contractors throughout the city of Johannesburg that are currently working in communities, providing services, delivering services on behalf of the city of Johannesburg.
I want us to move from the roads issue, but it would be a fallacy not to talk about the e-tolls before we do that. Let's look at this pay-as-you-go model. Why has it gone wrong in South Africa? Because if you look at other global examples, it's not a model that receives as much resistance as it's done in this particular country and in this particular province.
Well, let's say the system itself has not gone wrong. Mobility has improved. We've done a study that determines that, in fact, in terms of commuter pain, the level of commuter pain is what is called, has reduced. People are less stressed on the roads because there's improved mobility. So let's look at it from the point of view.
But that's pain in the car versus pain in the pocket, right? Just to make sure that we're right.
Reality is, though, people spend less time on the roads.
Yeah.
There's less congestion. So there's a benefit that we've received from it.
But why the resistance? Why is it so hard to sell this to South Africans?
I think that the challenge that we had in South Africa, and this is a personal opinion, I should admit, is that, in fact, when we introduced the expansion of the road network, we did not introduce the tolling system at that immediate point. So if you build a road network, we use the roads for a few years, we get into the World Cup, we enjoy ourselves, we see gantries being built, and we say, but what are these things that are being built here? And suddenly you wake up and they say, no, you need to pay.
Yeah.
As people get surprised and there's a degree of resistance. And I think that we could have done it better.
Who dropped the ball? Who dropped the ball? Who should have ensured that the communication campaign was aligned to the building of those gantries?
Well, I can't say who dropped the ball. I mean, I can only say it's a project.
Is it a career-limiting move to say who dropped the ball?
No. I mean, we have a view as local government. We've said as local government, we have particular views about it all. We've expressed them to the minister. We've expressed them to government. So as local government, we're not afraid to express our views about what we think. We say, for example, that e-tolls have an impact on the local road network because there's a diversion of traffic into the local roads. And there isn't a revenue sharing model where we benefit. So the impact on our roads is not necessarily compensated with our ability to maintain those roads. The pressure is being shifted to us as municipalities, and we've raised those issues. So there's no discomfort in saying so. I'm just saying, from a perception point of view, I think the lesson for all of us is that don't introduce a system much later than the infrastructure has been invested in. It's like saying, let's build a bus network, allow people to use the buses freely, and after a few years we say, well, actually, you know what, you need to start paying for these buses. People might resist. So I think it's a lesson that all of the country has learned, and I think that it's a lesson that Sandra has learned in this regard.
Another exciting aspect about your speech delivered today is the Wi-Fi, and in particular, bridging that digital divide for the City of Johannesburg. Talk to us a little bit about that, and what do you see for the city when it comes to broadband and those kind of achievements?
We need to break the digital divide. In fact, if the World Wide Web is considered the most influential innovation in recent history, then we need to ensure that all the people of Johannesburg, and certainly in this country, are able to access the World Wide Web. We've taken a decision that we should create Wi-Fi hotspots. We launched 10 today with the intention that over a period of 2 years there would be at least 1,000 Wi-Fi hotspots in the City of Johannesburg. But that's also coupled with the intention of creating access to universal accessibility to the internet. So people could be able to access cheaper internet and telephony directly from the City of Johannesburg. And that should reduce the cost of telephony and the cost of IT services in the City of Johannesburg.
How far are we from that dual target of cost and access?
Well, we've rolled out the fiber. We're now getting to the point of creating accessibility for last mile connections. We're finalizing the business model for how the last mile connections would be. We either have to make a decision that we roll it out or we bring in a service provider to create last mile access. But it's not just about access. We're also employing 1,000 young people at a beginning to train them so that they become trainers. Because it's one thing to say to people, you actually have access to technology. It's another for everybody to utilize it to its maximum. So we'll actually be going into households, in the townships, in the suburbs, in the townhouses, saying to people, these are cadres of the City of Johannesburg who would be able to train people, train trainers, create opportunities for people to maximize the value that the broadband infrastructure that we've already rolled out is able to give us, and the opportunities that the World Wide Web gives to all of us.
The name Park Style has become synonymous with Corridors of Freedom. You have a very close association to that particular program. Talk to me about the vision again, about what it is that you are seeing and trying to unlock with the Corridors of Freedom.
We see Johannesburg as a city that increases the levels of density and intensity of uses, of land uses along strategic corridors. If you go to any peer city around the world that is successful, that is doing very well, they have at least 5 times more densities than we have in the City of Johannesburg. We spend more money to give access to people for water, electricity, for access to the road networks, because in fact of the levels of sparsity of our city. You need to create the densities for you to even become competitive as a city. So it's about creating increased densities, increased intensity of land uses. I know that Johannesburgers would go from here, go to Paris, London, and New York and celebrate the way those cities function. And one of the things that makes those cities function is the compactness of those cities.
What resistance are you up against when we look at that concept of density? Are you facing resistance towards creating Johannesburg or making Johannesburg more dense?
We are. I mean, we've been engaging over the past year since we launched the Corridors of Freedom, in discussions with potential investors, they are excited. They are beginning to take up land, but we're finding resistance from communities because suburban life has become the norm. Almost everybody looks forward to a suburban environment. It's one yard, one big yard with a house and a swimming pool and all the opportunities that suburbanization gives. Reality is it will not make Johannesburg competitive against its peer cities across the world.
Mr.
We
Mayor,
see Johannesburg as a world-class city. We need to be able to compete against New York, against London, against Paris, but we need to build this city in a compact way that makes us as competitive as those cities.
we've got less than a minute. You played a role in the transformation Lekgotla that is responsible for the United Johannesburg we see today. Go back to that time and contradict that with the Johannesburg we have today. Have those ideals been met?
I think we've created an institution that has the capacity to build Johannesburg into a world-class city. I think that the first thing that we needed to sort out was build the institution, integrate the city because we're different municipalities, and then be able to stitch the city together. So through the Corridors of Freedom, we would be able to stitch disparate parts of the city of Johannesburg into one consolidated, integrated unit of a competitive city that is competitive internationally. So I think that we've made significant progress. When we started with the transformation Lekgotla, Johannesburg was broke. We can now say we boast a city on a solid financial footing, investing an unprecedented amount of money in public infrastructure. There's no other city in this country, in fact, that can per capita say it invests the amount of money. In fact, if you look at it this way, if you look at subnational governments in the country, and you say between provinces and municipalities, we are the third highest spender on capital infrastructure behind the province of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. And in fact, next year we project to be second behind the province of KwaZulu-Natal. That's the nature of the city.
When are you hitting the top spot?
When are we hitting the top spot? Watch the space.
Well, on that note, we'll be watching that space. That is the CEO of Johannesburg Incorporated, the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, His Worship Park Style.